River Talk at Clinton Community College. We will be talking about gun control today on October 11th, 2017, and we will introduce ourselves.
I'm Derek Miller.
I'm Dylan Temple.
I'm Sarah Ryan.
I'm Austin Lind.
And I'm Ashland Shores.
All right, who would like to start us off?
Well, I don't want to start, but I'd like somebody else to start.
Alright.
So gun control.
Gun control, we were obviously talking about this topic in light of recent events. Talking about the Las Vegas shooting. One of the things that I've seen is bump stocks or slide stocks, and I feel we'll just lead into that. Thoughts?
Okay, do you know how a bump stock works exactly?
I believe I do. Basically, the recoil of it is placed over the trigger. When you pull the trigger, the gun bumps backwards and it presses against your shoulder, pushing the bump stock forward, causing the trigger to be pushed again. So basically, the force of the gun is shooting itself, basically in a like oscillating type mechanism.
So it turns it into an automatic weapon.
No.
Well, it's similar. It shoots faster than a semi-auto normally does, but
I believe, and I might be wrong on this, it said that it could turn a, I think, I can't remember what it was, but there was a gun it gave the statistics for, and the gun would normally shoot 60 rounds a minute, just regular single fire. With the automatic of that, it could shoot 120, and with the bump stock, it would shoot 90. So it's not doubling, it's like about 1.5 ratio of that specific gun, so it's not automatic.
do you know how simple a bump stock is? It's very simple. It's,
So
anybody could really make it if they wanted to. So
And-
how do you outlaw that?
In order to outlaw that, you would actually probably have to outlaw modifications to guns.
They already pretty much are.
Yep. I knew that. But just also in the idea,
So are you like for or opposed to bump stocks?
I'm for, because it's really like he said, it's simple, and when it comes down to like mass shooting and stuff, you can still do a lot of damage, whether it's like 60 bullets or 90 bullets, you're still gonna hurt a lot of people, and the bump stock is going to, I don't wanna say help, but help that, increase that is better, but I don't think it makes that big of a difference. Either way, it's still a mass shooting.
I agree with that.
I think it's more on the people than the guns. You know, like it's more of a mentality. Like you have to be in a pretty sick mentality to be able to do some of the things that have happened in recent light. I don't think that's not necessarily on the guns.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on who is behind the gun.
Mm-hmm.
The
Exactly.
mental state of who's behind, because the police have guns.
Mm-hmm. There's always that saying, bad people are gonna do bad things.
Or the one that says, guns don't kill people, people kill people.
That's a good one too. So where do we go from here? What do you guys think should be done, or if there should be anything done? There's always call for more addition to laws on gun control, limitations and such others. Should we add more limitations? Take the limitations away, or should we actually look to actually enforcing the limitations that are already set in place?
I think they should either be kept the same or maybe very, very slightly increased on certain things.
Okay.
I think a lot of people are concerned with taking away all guns,
Mm-hmm.
and I would have to ask them who should be allowed a gun and who should not be allowed to own a gun.
A
Because
girl in a
you can
class.
draw a really fine line between that.
A girl in a class that I'm in, we were discussing this the other night. She said that she thinks to own a gun, you'd have to go through a psyche eval
I
first.
like that.
So that way you can tell if there's any, you can have a better understanding to see if somebody is in the right mind to have a gun. I mean, there's always the exception of somebody who passes the psych eval, but wouldn't, would do something horrible, like a mass shooting or something like that. But it kind of minimizes the risk. And I thought that her idea was actually really smart, because it would minimize the risk to some extent.
I think there should be a longer waiting period. I think, what is it, like,
3 days.
yeah, 3 days?
3 days.
I know that some places it's like a month or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
For what?
For if you can't after the shooting with Ronald Reagan, I don't remember his name, but was it his vice president? It's before my time. Well, it was put at
Ronald Reagan was shot.
He was, but
And he almost died.
it was somebody else, and he became mentally disabled because of it, and the law was named after him. After that
It was
happened,
Brady.
Brady, yes, the Brady laws. After that, before that, you could just go and walk in and buy a gun same day and do that. But now you go in, you purchase the gun, and you have to wait 3 days of like a background check period, so you can't just go in and buy it. Now, what they actually do during that time, I'm actually unclear, so.
And with permits, you also have to wait 3 days before you can even think about purchasing a gun after you get a permit for any handgun. Now, for rifles, it's different, but I don't know the specifics of it.
Now, what exactly is gun control trying to prevent? I'll ask that as an open question.
That's a very good question. Like you said, open-ended. I think it's trying to prevent like these mass shootings, these bad people from getting. People can have guns and people can be responsible and smart with them. It's just these mass shootings that like I don't want to, but like give them a bad rep, so to speak. Guns and any other weapon always are seen. I don't know where I'm going with that, but
Is it just to prevent mass shootings, or would gun control also prevent, say, suicide by gun?
Or domestic, just regular crime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of
Mhm.
national-
Any kind of murder,
so violence and
any kind of death. I mean, gun control, yeah, gun control would, if we found out a decent system, it could minimize gun-related deaths.
Yeah, like people aren't gonna take like bow and arrows to do like a mass shooting or anything like that. Like I know that sounds like, but
Well,
like
I
you
would
wouldn't
hope
have.
not,
Yeah,
but
you-
there was an episode of Criminal Minds where they did just that, so.
Oh.
Well, then I have a question. If guns are banned or at least severely limited, how do you address crimes committed with various types of weapons?
were you saying would the ramifications be larger then? Is that
like
what?
weapon control is what you're saying?
Yeah, like, say suppose somebody shoots somebody, like this past shooting in Las Vegas.
Mhm.
How do you address it? How do you stop them? How do you stop the shooter?
So you're saying we don't have guns? How do we stop that person?
Exactly. If we don't have guns, how do we stop bad people?
Well, we say, well, the police officer. So, would you be saying we take guns away from even police officers?
No.
No. Well, then the police officers would have the guns to do so. But if someone in the room over and had a gun, he could bust through the door and save them. But the real thing for me is how much we want to control violence with this necessarily. Say if we do ban guns and violence will always find like a new outlet, whether it be through like knives or even bows and arrows. You may not think it would happen.
Explosives.
Explosives. You may not think it would happen, but if guns are banned, people that are messed up in the head will always find another way to do that. If they want to do something, they're gonna do it.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly.
That's why I think there should be more mental health
Screaming.
facilitating or something.
Mhm.
And not
Instead of-
just
Instead
that,
of
but-
focusing on the weapon.
Well,
Mhm.
what's this?
And not just that, but we should, instead of just labeling people, we should be able to offer more treatment that's not going to cost them or their families a lot of money or something like that. You know, we gotta figure out a way to not only not only find these people and label them, but also to help them.
What about people that don't show symptoms beforehand and just go out on a whim one day and it's like, I'm gonna do this thing?
Mhm.
Like, that's not something that you can really prevent.
That's very true. And certain screenings don't even do that because most people act normal. This guy had no, Stephen Paddock had no prior signs of psychiatric problems, I believe.
No criminal record.
No criminal record
He's
or
like
anything. Not
like
even
64, 65. wasn't he?
64, not even a misdemeanor, I do believe. just one day went out and did this. I don't know if they found a motive yet. They said he did it without motive, I believe.
I don't think they found anything yet, no.
But a lot of people are in disbelief at that because this was very well planned, and they said he had planned to go to other events too, but it just seemed too planned for some people. So they believe he was affiliated with something and had some sort of motive.
I think it's definitely something that would be hard to prevent in any capacity. I think it's just people enter frames of mind and just do these awful things. I don't think it's the gun's fault. I don't think it's.
But the gun is an outlet for that.
Let me ask this question. Is it better if more people are armed or worse?
That depends if the people can handle it or not.
I just mean, like, all Americans in general. Would it be better if 100% of Americans were armed, excluding, people
Aren't there already
under
like more
21?
guns than people?
Also convicts.
Or less? Huh?
You'd have to exclude convicts too.
I know,
A lot of
I'm just
people
saying,
would
anybody who
prior
should be
to-
eligible to own a gun. Would
In
it
a
be better
the-
if
in
they
a-
owned one, or would it be better if they didn't
In a
own one?
theoretical, if we could say 100 versus 0, obviously you would say 0. Just for the purpose of defense. Because if no one is defending them, if no one has a gun to defend themselves, no one's going to use that gun to kill somebody else. But for the purpose of rights and because some people just shoot guns on the weekend or whatever, or something like that,
And some people hunt.
and some people hunt as well as such others, things like that.
I
It's
have a-
just yeah, no, sorry.
I have a question. Would it be bad if we outlawed automatic and semi-automatic weapons to regular people with no training and limited the sales of the other guns, like for hunting and, for protection, I suppose? What would be the outcome of that?
You mean limiting semi-autos?
And, yeah, and also limiting the amount of, ammo that you can purchase, like, within a time period. Say, within a year, you can only purchase so much ammo. Or within 6 months, you can only purchase so much ammo, and they keep record of that. Because really, you can't kill somebody with a gun if you don't have a bullet.
I feel like people
All-
within this frame of mind would just, like, this was planned out, obviously, like,
They could buy it from somebody else.
yeah, they
Yeah.
could just
Yeah,
give it to somebody else.
that is
Or they
true.
could just stockpile stuff over years of time, or whatever
And
and still do the same thing.
they could follow the
Black
guy.
market or whatever.
They could follow the guidelines, whatever. They could buy only 300 rounds this year, 300 rounds next year, and if they have no prior, like with this guy, he didn't have any prior signs of this, and just one day go out and use all 6,000 rounds or whatever. I just wanted to bring this up really quick. One of the things I find most funny about gun control is them limiting the clip size on guns. It's pretty hilarious because the idea of the clip is you can easily switch it out with another clip. So you just cut down the 13 round clip to a 7 round clip. Oh no, let me just switch out a clip real quick.
It takes all of 1 second.
It's like, oh, I think the thing is that they're trying to make it more inconvenient, but
Still, in a matter of oh crap, 5
people
rounds.
can
left.
do you can strap magazines to each other and flip
Yeah.
them around. And
Yeah, you can have a
1
whole
second.
harness of 30 rounds.
Okay, well, back to what I was saying when I said it would be better if more Americans were armed. There was a study in 2013, May 9th. It says 48% of convicted felons admitted avoiding or committing a crime when they knew there was armed citizens. So there's definitely an argument that says that having armed citizens prevents crime, violent crime.
If you look realistically, the more violent crimes we have, the more people go out and buy guns. A gun salesman had been interviewed and he had said after San Bernardino happened, his sales went up 50% because people, this happens, so they get more to protect themselves, which could be good or bad because then you don't know who's buying it. And aside from background tests and making sure that they are, mentally stable enough to have it, and I mean that very, open-ended case by case because not everyone with mental illness is a risk, which I feel like we need to make that clear because that's often a misconception. But aside from that, there's not really, what can you do to really regulate this? How can you really know? And yeah, you can have a waiting period, which you should, but then besides that, what do you do? How do you, regulate this anymore?
That's my point. I mean, either you have it or you don't. You can't really go in between other than what we have right now.
So that study says that the weapons are better as like a deterrent,
Yes.
so to speak. So do we want to live in a society where everyone has, because that's sort of like how we are with wars right now. Everyone, and that's how it was in the Cold War, everyone had nukes and stuff. They were used as a deterrent because no one would want to overstep anybody because for the fear of nukes and stuff like that. Where do we want to live in that state of, well, I don't want to overstep this person because they're going to shoot me? Do we want that, or would we prefer just having no deterrence and having everyone be? It just sort of like ramps up so quickly is the thing.
Well, here's the thing, you can't control other people.
That's true.
I mean, if somebody's gonna kill you.
That's the difference between international and domestic relationship.
Yeah.
I mean,
'cause
I
it's-
don't have the power of you to say you can't have a gun, and other governments don't have the power of other ones to say you can't have nuclear weapons. So would you rather have the person, the psycho, have the nuclear weapon, or everybody have nuclear weapons? I mean, that's kind of, you have to make the bad guys threatened. You have to make them know that there will be resistance. Otherwise, they just, how many mass shootings have been in gun-free zones? A lot of them. I know that Sandy Hook was gun-free zone, and how many kids did he kill? How many?
24.
Universities
25.
are weapon-free
Uh-huh.
zones, and there's been numerous shootings at universities. I mean, just a few years back, what was it, Virginia Tech or something? Yeah, there was a shooting there, and can't remember how many casualties there were, but it was a devastating
Mhm.
mass shooting. And again, weapon-free zone, so nobody had any chance of protecting themselves. So,
If you were to ban guns anyway, I think people would still find a way.
oh, definitely.
Criminals definitely would.
Yeah.
Well, not just criminals, but I don't want to like throw anybody out there, but I know people who are gun
Hide
enthusiasts.
it.
They
Buried in
not
your
only
backyard.
do would they do that, but they make their own. I know people who actually make their own guns, which is illegal. But
Yeah, if there's no,
And
it's
none
such
of
a
them are
hard
just-
thing to prevent that it's just, I don't think passing a law or anything like that would ever do the job.
I think it'd make it worse, honestly.
Yeah.
The criminals would still have guns.
Well, it's
They'd
like,
still-
it's like when we ban, alcohol, like, people are
oh
try
yeah,
even harder to get,
Exactly, you could say prohibition made
Mhm.
alcoholism and
Worse.
the violence from it worse.
I think if we did ban something like guns, we just make a fool of ourselves, such as prohibition.
Which is really why I think we should just not set new laws or just make minor tweaks and just continue and enforce laws we already have in place. Because these people, they're getting through loopholes and such other things like that to get these guns. And if we enforce those better, we can limit that.
I like
What
the, I
about
like
private
the,
sales? That's the thing we really need to talk about, private
Private
sales.
sales, okay.
How do you prevent somebody selling to somebody else that hasn't gone through a background check or anything like that? Selling them a gun. I mean, I think that's one of the major issues.
that's how many former convicts get guns.
Or they steal them or something like that. How do you keep the guns out of the wrong hands?
like you can. And that's the problem we face.
I think ultimately you can take certain precautions, but you end up taking guns away from legal, law-abiding citizens, which is not the effect people want.
Anything else?
Yep.
Well, I also had an argument, it might seem kind of far out there, but
Spit it.
would you guys agree with the definition of government to be a monopoly on the legitimate use of physical force?
A legitimate use of physical force. So the limitation of weaponry.
Like, the government has they have to use force, ultimately, that's their only power source of coercing or whatever you wanna call the
Where did you
populace.
get this definition?
What would make you happy when I say, where I got this definition?
I'm just curious, what is your source?
It was some sort of philosopher, I don't remember what his guy was, it was like in the 1930s or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That is,
if the government's power is based on its force, would you guys agree with that, on that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
On its use, like the police or anything like that, its army, is the surrender, is the freedom to own a gun the surrender of the government's power to its citizens?
Well, I feel like if you took guns away from like police force as well as everybody else, it's not like they wouldn't be able to enforce things. It'd just be like a slap on the wrist to people, you know, like, hey, you did this bad thing, jail. But like, I don't know.
I'm saying is like, is the freedom that we have to own guns the distribution of the government's power to its own people?
You could say that. And that ties in with the Second Amendment, with the militia. And that's more so fighting, the Second Amendment is more so fighting back at the government. That's a pretty good argument. I like that.
I was gonna say, isn't it important that we have rights to fight against armed government if we need to?
Mm-hmm. That's, yeah. Great declaration. It's pretty good. I like that. Should take that to Congress.
I think most of the arguments are not pointed enough, they're not, it's just like, people are talking past each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about their viewpoints, they're not trying to actually solve
And
problems.
they're not finding any common ground.
Exactly.
You
I
need-
think everybody, even if on this panel, we can all agree that, mental health needs to be improved or addressed.
And to fight, and to figure out a solution, everybody working for that solution must find common ground before they can start to build. I'm tongue-tied today.
And a lot of the, I'm gonna tie this back in with everything. A lot of the issues we have today, and I've always had, is unity. We've, through time, always had these spells where we dip farther away and we dip back in, but we can never hold that to where we dip back in unity together. And they say we're the most divided that we've ever been today, and I'm probably sure that may not be true.
I don't think that's
No,
true.
because it's a cycle. It really is. It's a cycle that goes out and back in, and
It seems like when we have major tragedies over something that we do unify, and just need to be able to figure out how to stay
we shouldn't
together.
we shouldn't have to be unified over tragedy.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think anybody questions, was the shooting right or wrong?
No.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
I
think
guess that's all we have to say.
Yeah, I think this has been
Alright.
our river talk.
Awesome, thank you for watching, if you are watching, and come back next week for a new
You're still
topic.
watching?